setting aside the day-to-day stuff that Marwan spoke about, or the stamping of the passport, any one of these day-to-day humiliating issues, setting those aside, is there a core issue? If you were my father, born in the 40s, born in his grandfather's home in El Bire, in the Bire, 1967 he left here in 1956. Happened not to be here in the 1967 war, and now he is only allowed to be here as a visitor. That's the easiest case I'm giving you.
Yeah.
I'm not giving you the case of the refugee, I'm not giving you the case of the guy that came with his backpack, I'm giving you the case of a middle-class guy who right now is looking for one thing in his life. How can I retire as a Palestinian citizen in my home, which was my grandfather's home, where I was born?
Yeah.
Very simple. That's the situation that has to be solved. That's at the crux of the issue. Setting aside the rocks, setting aside the complicated issues. The issues that can be solved tomorrow by proper leadership is Sam does not pose a threat to Israeli security. He should be allowed to be one of the first refugees or the first diaspora to come back.
I don't even say.
So what I'm trying to do is take a big issue called the refugee issue and break it down as we do in a lot of different things with complicated problems. How can I start addressing it so I can get the experience to be able to solve the harder one? They're not ready to solve the smaller problems. It tells me they're not prepared for a historic final status where it ends. Where someone like you comes and says, you guys are both crazy, end this shit now, you can do it. Everybody knows the ending. What are you waiting? Livelihood. You're giving back their livelihood. So they're not always thinking about 1948. If people are working, building shopping centers, and having successful businesses, and getting educations, and doing research and development, they have less time to think about 1940, what happened. That's going to be in the history. I can accept the Israeli point of view when a Palestinian comes and says, I don't accept your existence, your right to exist as a state. It's a non-start. You can't start there. You cannot start there.
End of the conversation?
Exactly.
Where's my gun?
If you don't give me the right to exist, and you're making that an issue, even if politically you accepted it, but in talking to people you don't accept it, there's a problem there. The guy who says, I'm here because God made me here, and if I leave, I'm going to, it's non-stop. You can't start talking with someone like that. Both of those represent, in my point of view, not the mainstream, not the silent majority. The silent majority of Palestinians accept Israel's right to exist. I have an Israeli friend, Michael Dahan, who writes with me. We frequently co-write together. We always say, if he and I were in a room, 24, 48 hours, we can solve 70% of the problem. To the acceptance of the majority in both populations. And the other 30%, let's sit for another 10 years and discuss it and work and get expert teams and committees. That's fine. Because by the time you reach that point, it becomes less of an issue as well. What the Israelis are doing to make this more difficult, if they don't reach a solution today, if the generation that lived in 1948 fades away without a political solution, they would have given, the new generation would have inherited the 1948 dialogue and discourse. There would not have been another discourse in between. The Israelis are making a critical mistake by not today implementing the withdrawal of occupation. They can end occupation tomorrow morning. The word occupation would no longer mean anything. I don't know what will come in its place. Maybe a democratic Palestinian state, maybe a constructive society, maybe a non-constructive society, maybe whatever it is, it's a living experience of a generation that changes the reference point. Today, the reference point is occupation. So for some people, the reference point is 1948. And because of the oppression, because of the lack of another discourse, I teach my kids about 1948, I teach them about 1967, about occupation. There's nothing else to teach them. The Israelis have not allowed the Palestinian community to create a new discourse. And this is, I think, strategically a wrong mistake. If in the beginning of Oslo, instead of doing an interim agreement that was very tilted towards them to make it very hard for us to grow, if they would have relaxed a little bit and gave us all the components necessary to build a new discourse, believe me, we wouldn't be in the Intifada. The Israeli establishment, the Israeli political body has to, as the stronger power, take the brunt of that responsibility, take the brunt of that insight. Current discourse is unfortunately, for right or for wrong, applying all the blame for our inability to grow properly to the Israeli occupation. Part of it's true, part of it's not true.
That's right.
There's no damn reason right now why we don't have good court system in Palestine. No reason. The Israelis are not part of defining our court system. Why? For 10 years, we don't have a rule of law. So when somebody tells me that the occupation, I tell them shut up. The occupation, the Ramallah court can work, there's no Israeli soldier there.